We have what is basically just the Xamarin starter template with a couple of things removed that were necessary for the tutorial. Basic project here is going to be the shared project that has most of our stuff in it. And of course, we have Android and iOS and then some tests. I'm not using the tests in this particular demo, but we want to make sure we're filling that out as we go. I'm going to start paying more attention to this as we do pull requests. And if I don't see tests for whatever you're building, I'm going to start rejecting them. So make sure you're actually doing tests, because that is something that is a part of our standard and is part of something we've been pushing for a while and just not doing. So we need to have those from now on. So we're going to ignore the Android and iOS portions because there isn't anything in there that we need. Those are just the starter projects that Xamarin creates for us, so we don't need those really at all right now. So we're going to focus on these pieces here. I've got just some models that are going to be helpful, and this isn't organized the way I would really like it to be, just because it was a tutorial and I was in a hurry, but it should give you somewhat of an idea. So we have our main app file, which is here. And this is going to house all of our startup logic for everything that our application does. So we have configure services, which works just like the website version does. You get a service collection, you come in here, you register your stuff. The first thing we do is register our binder. Then we register our navigators, and those are going to be the things that allow us to go from page to page. It's going to wire together the view with the view model. This is one of the libraries that Mindfire owns. So it's this mindfire.binding.xamarin, I believe, or no, mindfire.xamarin, that's the one. That it has those in, so it's just a NuGet package. Anybody can use this. So if you want to start your own project and don't want to use Mindfire starter template, go for it, just install this. It'll automatically bind things together and wire up some stuff that makes it easier to use. This is using a shell navigator, and we're using a shell navigator specifically because we are using an app shell. So if you want to use Xamarin's new shell and get the navigation stuff to work properly, you need to use Shell Navigator. I would say going forward with our projects, 99% of the time, this is what we're going to want to do. But if there's a case where we're not using Shell and we don't want to use Shell, we can instead use this piece here, where we have the classic navigator. This is going to navigate the way that Xamarin did things before Shell was invented. So if we have a legacy app or just an app that we don't want to use Shell for, this is what we're going to want to do. Okay. The differences are that with Shell, you get to navigate using basically URL routes. So just like you're used to with the web, where you can say, you know, /account/user, or /account/login, or /items/details, that kind of stuff, you would do the same thing with Shell. So it makes things easier because we don't have to have references to view models in other view models or knowledge about where the application is in order for things to work. We just know routes. And that's as far as we need to go. So this, comment out. Pretty much everything else is going to be stuff you're used to. So we're adding logging, which we should have in everything. One of the things I'm rejecting in pull requests now is if I see system.diagnostics.debug, that's an immediate rejection as soon as I see it. We want to do that instead, and then ask for an instance of the logger, because this will still log to the diagnostics. We get everything that gives us, but we can add in things like console or writing to files or sharing to a web service. Whatever we want to do, just right here, and then every instance of the logger gets it. So we're having to go back and replace, you know, however many instances of system.diagnostics, so also include file writing and web service writing and all that stuff. So the last piece is this. We want to just create our new app shell. Okay, we also want to create our navigator. This is a piece that we have to do. If we don't do it, the navigator never gets kicked off until the first time it's requested, which won't really be anywhere, which means we miss all of the navigation for the app shell. So we want to make sure we're doing this inside the startup. And then this brings us to the first piece that is new that people may not have seen. Xamarin now supports theming. So we can actually use this to see what the requested theme is. And this is going to get it from the system. So if the system supports dark themes and light themes, we can get that from the system here, and then we can decide what we want to do. So if they've picked dark, then we set our theme to dark. If they're unspecified, unspecified. If it's light, right now I've got it specified to dark, so we can have whatever default we want. I actually end up switching these in some of my later commits. This is just me. I want to see the dark theme, so I swap things around so I can see it. But we can do theming now. So this is an important piece as we move forward because there are going to be people that want to have light and dark themes. And this is going to be how we set that up. There are more pieces that we'll do if we want to have a settings option where the user can select what theme they want, if they want to be the OS based or if they want to actually pick dark or light. We can do that. But to make this happen, if we come over here to our app.xaml, you can see I've got a bunch of colors defined. Okay. Down here, where I'm setting some of those pieces, so here's my label, just my default label. I'm going to tell it the text color, and then I'm using this app theme binding. Okay, here I can tell it what I want for the dark and what I want for the light. So in this case, for the dark, I want it to be this dark, which is this color here. For the light, I want it to be just plain dark, which is this color here. Okay, and then of course I have text primary, secondary, success, info. I copied the structure of Bootstrap just because it's what we're most likely familiar with, but we could name these whatever and just reference them here. Okay, and then I can come down and create all the different types just like Bootstrap does. We've got dark, light, danger, warning, info, blah, 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 blah. Title. Okay, same thing with buttons. So my default button is going to be a light button with secondary coloring and the border of that color. I've got a button primary where that switches over to the primary. I've got button secondary where it's secondary, success, and so on. And those are as far as I decided to go just because they take some time. But we can do this for all of our pieces. And at some point, I probably will take the time to go through and create an entire theme just like Bootstrap has. But for now, this is what we've got. But this should get us pretty well started. And all this means is when we switch to the dark theme, we're going to be using this color. We switch to the light theme, we're going to be using this color. So the app will just automatically update for us, and that's as much as we need to do. So let me actually switch to my theme logic. Oh, I'm going to kill Visual Studio again, aren't I? No, that wasn't too bad. Okay, so I haven't really added much. There are a couple of pieces that are in here now, but all this is just the way of defining colors. What I've added now is this settings piece right here. Okay, so I've got a settings page and a settings view model. If you look at the settings page, all it is a stack layout, and then I've got just this, it's a label with a list view, and the list view is just going to be the options for my theme. And that's really it. So this is bound to the theme as the selected item. Themes is the item source. That's going to display it. It's not going to be pretty. I didn't take a lot of time to make that pretty, but it'll work for the purposes of this. So inside of our view model, I now had this IEnumerable of themes, and we wouldn't want to do this with an int, obviously, in a real application, but for this case, it got me as far as I needed to go. Then, of course, I have my theme. It's going to have the property. You can see when this page is deactivated, that is going to set the theme in the settings service, and it's going to send a message center to say update theme. Really with the messaging center, I could do this piece there as well, but it seems like this is thing's responsibility to actually call that out. So use your judgment there. Both are probably going to be fine. But the point is that when this is deactivated, it's just going to update that theme.
So is that a message to...
So before I show you that, let's go back to the shell, and let's talk about how this works. Okay, so inside the shell, it starts out with these optional templates piece that we're not, well, we will use, but we're not using right now. There are two ways of setting up the shell. You can have the shell work with these flyout things, okay, or you can have the shell work with a tab bar. Those two are mutually exclusive, and flyout wins if they're both there. So you can't have a tab bar and flyout at the same time. You want to have the little bottom bar like we're used to. In fact, I think I can probably just launch this. Let's do settings. light. And then let's just do that. Okay, so this menu system down here that we're used to, so we've got Bluetooth and I've got Wi-Fi. Okay, we can't have that and have the flyout items at the same time, which is this piece here. Now, obviously I do, because I've got this and I have tabs, so there's a way you get around that. But you can't define them in the shell with both a tab bar and with flyout items. It's one or the other. So if you want just a tab bar, it's a really simple application that just needs this, then just have tab bar. If you don't want the little hamburger menu that flies out, okay, then just use tab bar. But if you do want that flyout, then you're going to have to use flyout items, which is done differently. So I'm actually going to redeploy this and overwrite the application I've got there just to show you the differences. So give that a sec. Okay, so now we can see what we've got. So this tab bar defines this tab bar, aptly named. Okay, we have a tab, which is the tab, title, which is going to be what shows up here, and then route, which defines how we get to this. So if anywhere else I want to navigate to this page, rather than through the UI, but actually programmatically, this is the thing that I'm going to need to know about to do that. And of course, I can define an icon. This shell content, this is what's going to be the page that it navigates to. So here's the about view, here's the settings page. So if I click on settings page, again, here's my settings. I can choose dark, and it just activates the dark theme, and you can see it updates the colors just like I would expect. Okay, again, I didn't take the time to actually make this pretty, but it works. I'll go back to light. There we go. And of course, I could make that happen on select rather than on navigate. But that's how I chose to do it. So the Shell's tab bar, okay, very simple system. Just define the tabs that you want, and then those show up here. Of course, you only have so many you can use. Typically, that's 4 before you just run out of space in the bottom. So make sure you're aware of that. Generally, what you would do is have one that's going to be the little ellipsis that's going to add more pieces. Okay, but that's how you can do your tabs with that. So questions on this piece or on the themes? Can I not hear right now? No. I can only open audio settings if I stop sharing it. The speakers chose the USB. Oh, and the microphones. Why did it choose that as the speaker? All right, let's switch.
Let's say something now.
Microphones. I haven't switched the speakers yet. Hang on.
Now I can hear Nate a little better. Can you hear me any better?
I can hear you now, yeah. So I'll probably switch the microphone source then.
Yeah, it's a really good microphone, actually.
Can you hear me on the microphone, Phil? Okay.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so I assume I've been talking over people or missing questions then?
Just one of mine. It's not a big deal.
What was your comment?
I don't even remember.
Okay.
This is a long time ago.
So anybody else have things they want to see or that aren't clear? Take that as a no. All right, so let's switch over to the last piece, which is the most important piece. We should have stopped that first. All right, so inside this, we've got a few more pieces that I've added in. Inside pages here, we've got the settings page, which we've already seen. We've got the about page, which we've already seen. But now I've got these features pages. So in this case, I just chose Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and they don't really do anything with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. I just needed names for them. Then I've got this other section, which has this thing 1 because I was running out of ideas and time and just didn't care to come up with stuff. So this is going to be one of those cases where we have a hierarchy of navigation, which is pretty much every app we build nowadays. So we could have an account section, we could have login, register, profile, details, whatever we want to call that one. And then anything under account would go there. And we could have something like products, and we could have list, search, details, whatever else we needed onto that next section. So we can group these by how they're organized together, which is really how we want to organize them. Okay, we've also got these converters and different rules. These are under pages specifically because they only deal with the UI. So in general, I don't like seeing models and then having converters and then converters. Nate has talked, and Nate, feel free to chime in, has talked a lot about how ASP.NET's MVC system has kind of ruined us because we'll do things like controllers, views, models, and they're all grouped together, despite the fact that the controllers don't really tie together and the views that they belong with are in a completely different section. And so it's not obvious what things go with what. So group things by what they do, not by what they are. And things are a little bit easier to reason about. So we have our view model. If I had a converter or something that was specific to just this page, it would be under this same folder. Or even a model, same thing. So that's why these are underneath here. Some of you may have seen that, and I've seen these moved elsewhere. I haven't been rejecting pull requests because that's more of something that I can't really enforce. It's something that Nate and I think believe, but not something that I can enforce. So.
And if you're not sold yet, I'm happy to talk your ear off until you finally come to our way of thinking.
Yeah. So if you move them, I'm not going to reject it, but try to keep them here because it does make more sense. Just if you're trying to find stuff that is going to be, I want to look at the pages piece. Maybe we should rename that UI. I'm not sure. Anyway.
Doesn't it make sense then to move the validation rules into the folders that they belong to?
Yes and no. So it depends on what there is. This username rule that I've got here, there is the potential for that to be needed inside login and registration. So you can't have it with login unless you have it duplicated with registration, which we obviously don't want to do. So you could do something where you create a folder that is, create, usually have account and then creation and then login and registration go underneath that. And that goes. So yeah, you can nest them if it makes sense. Obviously you don't want to go overboard with it. But if there's something that's going to be useful in multiple places, then we want to bring it out to a higher level such that everything that needs it can get to it without having to steal it from some other piece. So this theme int value converter right here, I actually probably should have put that underneath the settings because it's only being used in settings. So again, I was in a hurry, so this isn't organized exactly as I would do it if I were doing it on a professional level, but just to give you an idea. Anyway, so let's look at, well, these pieces aren't anything different than what we've been looking at, so there's nothing really here. We've got some commands, got some views. Nothing terribly special here, although I will point this out. On the thing command and settings command, notice we're using this navigate to with a string. Okay, again, that's something we can only do with the shell. If we have the classic navigator, which is just iNavigator, then we can't do that. We'd have to navigate to and then give it the type of the page we want to go to. So something like this.
So if you have the shell navigator, then you need to be injecting an iRoute navigator. If you're using classic navigation, you should be using iNavigator.
You can use iRoute Navigator. Oh, Visual Studio, quit trying to help. There. So obviously you can do this. Did I call this something different?
It just doesn't know what it is, right?
Well, it doesn't, but it doesn't know. Oh, I just think I called it settings page. That's why. Now I can bring in the namespace. There we go. So obviously I can use Route Navigator to do this if I need to, but iNavigator is the most basic type. iRoute Navigator is more specific because it can do everything iNavigator can do, but it can also navigate using strings. So those are a hierarchical relationship. So yeah, if you're not using Shell, you won't have access to iRoute Navigator. But if you are using shell, you can use either, just depending on what you want to do with it. If you're using strings, you have to have iRoute Navigator, which means you have to have shell. If you're doing it this way, you don't have to have shell and you don't have to have iRoute Navigator, but you can if you want. Okay, the reason we don't like this is that now my Bluetooth view model knows about the settings page, which means if I ever have to swap this out for something else, or if I want to change this to navigate somewhere else, I have to do it here and then potentially anywhere else that's using it, versus if I just have that, then this thing doesn't know anything about what page it's going to. It doesn't even know that this is, well, I mean, this is the settings one. It doesn't even know necessarily this is going to a settings page. It could be going literally anywhere.
So
And-
talk about the string itself. So settings is obviously just a page, but what's the difference between the // up above? Is that
We'll get
telling it to start from the beginning and drill down, or what?
We'll get there. So I just wanted to point out for now the difference between the string navigation and the type navigation. We'll come back to why these are different in a second, but that's what I wanted to point out, is the type navigation versus string navigation. So if we look then at our shell, okay, notice I have taken out the tab bar because I no longer want just a tab bar. Now I want the flyout that comes to the left. Okay, to make that happen, you're going to use either flyout item or shell content. Shell content is going to be basically just a single flyout item. So in this case, I want just my about to show up. And that's going to look exactly the same as this, except that I've added the route and title to it. Okay, having them grouped like this, though, means that this is going to be a hierarchical navigation. So here I've got features, then Bluetooth, and features, then Wi-Fi. And these are still Bluetooth and Wi-Fi pages, just like the About page, but now I've got them wrapped underneath this features route. So in order to navigate to these, I would have to say features/Bluetooth or features/Wi-Fi. Okay, same with down here, even though there's only one of them, because I've got it nested underneath other, then I would have to say other/thing1. Okay, and then that's going to take me to the thing1 page.
I have a shell question.
Okay.
Question, actually a couple. Question the first. When we use shell, are all the pages that are inside of shell, are they like statically loaded? Like, are they always existing and we're just navigating to them? Or are they created the first time we navigate to them and destroyed when we navigate away?
Yes. It depends.
Okay.
The
That
shell-
was safe to say.
The shell is intelligent, so it's going to do what it needs to do in the least resource intensive way possible. So when you say they're statically loaded, depending on what you've done, yes, they are going to be statically loaded. In the case I've got here, because I've got this set as multiple items, actually, even then, I believe everything in this case except the About page is going to be dynamically loaded.
Okay. So question second, is it possible to have two shells? Let's say you had a really large app. Is it possible to have like this shell be like this part of the app and then eventually it'll navigate someplace else and we want a whole different shell for a whole different section of the app?
Sure, your navigation is going to be wildly complex, but yeah.
How bad could it be?
I cannot think of any possible reason why you would want to do that.
For the reason I just stated, it's a very large app.
So,
Maybe the admin pages need their own section.
and you can't just do it like this.
It requires many other flyouts in its own right.
Well, what you would probably want to do is a nested application, but since your particular scenario is likely never to happen, I'm not going to spend much more time on it, and we'll deal with it if it comes.
Sounds good.
So back to the what we were trying to cover is the routing here. So this is creating, in this case, it's just about, and that's it. That's the route. This is creating nested routes. So we've got features / whatever's underneath them to get to them, other / whatever's underneath them to get to them. Okay, so these are creating some nested routes. This is how we want to create pretty much all of our routes. There aren't very many that we would want to navigate to that aren't created this way. Now, there are times when we want to have pages, though, that are not listed inside the flyout. Okay, in this case, if I wanted to get to the settings page but didn't want to have the settings inside the flyout, so there wasn't a little thing that said settings, then I can't use these to register it, because if I register them as a flyout item, it's going to show up. So if I don't want it to show up, then what I would do is over here in the app.xaml.cs file, the startup file, I would use this register route functionality to tell it the route that I want it to be, and then the page I want it to go to. Okay, so this will allow me to register a route that does not appear as a flyout item on the UI. So I can't get to this page using the UI, but I can still navigate to it programmatically. And there are plenty of times when we want to do this. Settings is actually an okay example, though typically we're going to have the settings in the bottom left of the flyout item anyway, but this might be one that we want to use it as. You'll notice over here that I'm not actually listing it as a flyout item. I'm listing it as a menu item. Menu items don't have routes. Okay, these are things that are just clickable things that appear inside the flyout item. Okay, they can do whatever we want them to do. So in this case, I just used the click event handler just to tell it to go to settings. Okay, but we could make this do whatever we wanted it to do. So this is just a menu item in this case. It has no functionality in and of itself. It's just settings.
Can you run that and show it to us?
I will in a minute, yes.
I also want to see that last page again.
What last page?
The one that had the go to async. I was curious where the go to async was
How
coming
to
from.
go to? Oh, this is just the code behind for the app shell.
Where is go to async defined?
In the app shell.
Oh, I see. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So because we've defined register route with settings, because we defined settings as a registered route, but not as something that appears in the UI, this navigation happens differently from the navigation that happens with these pieces. So just in your original question back here, the reason these look different is because of how they're being navigated to. So the register route things are not hierarchical. They're not part of the shell's navigation knowledge, which means you can't navigate them with a relative navigation string. So in this case, you have to navigate them to them with just the route itself, with nothing before it, nothing after it. Well, you could do query string parameters, but nothing before it. It has to be just that. Okay, but with something that's a part of the UI, so any of these here, you can navigate using more relative terms. So in this case, I'm saying go back to the root navigation piece, then I want to go to the other route, then I want to go to thing 1. Okay, in fact, let me do this. What did I call it? Just Wi-Fi? All right. Okay, let me tie that in. Let's say it's this one. All right, so I've tied that to this Wi-Fi command. So now all I'm doing is saying go back up a page or up a level. So that'll take me to, in this case, Bluetooth doesn't really know what that is, but we know it's going to be this features section here. Then I want to go to Wi-Fi after that. So what this is showing is that I can actually use relative routing. If features itself had content associated with it, Or if I went to Wi-Fi and then Wi-Fi told me to go to Bluetooth, okay, telling Bluetooth to navigate to just ... would say go back to whatever you were. So it's the equivalent of saying go back. So you can do the navigate to ... or you could even say route navigator go back. They're going to do the exact same thing. The only difference is that go back will also let you use the classic navigation style, and so it'll pop off the stack that way too. So that's what I would prefer, but you can do ... if you know for sure it's a string path, and that'll take you back to whatever you were in before. In this case, it's taking me back to wherever I was and then up to Wi-Fi. All right. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, it might actually need to be features/Wi-Fi, but we'll see if it breaks and then fix it if it does. All right. Those are bound. So features, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. Again, this needs to be navigated as an absolute path versus anything that's registered in the UI would be registered or would be routed to as a relative path. And again, if we want it to be, you know, root / whatever, then we put the double slashes there to say go to root and then navigate forward from there. Let's see. Nate, you want to see something? Was it just the UI in person or in vivo?
That was me, yeah.
Okay, so that was Justin. Nate, what did you want to see?
I don't recall requesting anything.
Okay.
I think his question was just on that go to async.
Okay. So we'll deploy this and run it. All right, so first thing to point out, inside of our flyout, I didn't theme that very well. Should make these dark, but oh well. And I should have made that not primary because that's pretty terrible.
Show app shell.xaml along with it.
In fact, let me change this real quick. There we go. So there's your XAML live update, Nate. But yeah, so you can see that's the color. This has an icon right here, so that's why it shows up. These do not, because I don't have icons for them. So they don't have anything. But you can see they're all grouped. So about is here, then you get the solid line, the features, which are there, thing one, which is here. If I take this off, so this flyout display options here, that's going to make it display as a single item. And you can see that now, not only do we lose the bottom border, but it's only being displayed as the top level route. The same thing would happen if I do this. Okay, so now features is what shows up, and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi go away. So having those display as multiple items will actually list the items underneath them grouped.
So when you click on it, what's it do?
This, it takes you to a page that contains both of those. It's going to be the first one, which I believe is going to be Bluetooth. Yep. Okay, so Bluetooth view. Now, Justin, just because I told you I'd show you how to do this yesterday, I may as well show you now. You'll notice if I go back to just the About page, there's no bottom border or bottom tab bar. Okay, it's completely gone. All I get is the flyout stuff. If I go to the Settings page, again, no bottom piece. If I go to the other page, again, no bottom piece. So there aren't any tab bars anywhere that the shell has specified, except if I come in here to features. Shell is smart enough to know that because there are two of these items, you're going to potentially want to navigate to both of them. Okay, so it's going to put this tab bar underneath based on the child pieces of shell content. So that's also going to be a factor in how you group these things together and whether or not they show up in the UI. If you have things like for whatever reason you don't want the login or registration pages to show up here, but you want to have them, well, you'll have them grouped over here in your folders, but you just don't want to have them show up in the flyout item. You would use the register route inside here to do that, and then they won't show up. You can still get to them. They just won't be a part of the account hierarchy in that case. Okay, but these still work as tab bars. I can go to Wi-Fi, I can go to Bluetooth. Again, they don't have icons because I didn't specify icons. I guess I could do this. Everything gets the same icon. There we go. So now they get icons.
Hot reload.
What's that?
Hooray for hot reload.
Yeah, it's a nice feature. Okay,
So
but from here,
if you did not want it to display,
if you don't want it to display, you can't put it in display. Say that again.
Are we still at
Are you still what?
echo?
I don't know if we're echoing or what's going on.
So my question is, if we don't want the menu bar to show on the bottom of a certain page, we just go into that page and tell it not to show it.
If you don't want this to show up or the menu
Either.
bar. This is because this is a navigation bar. This is a tab bar. You can tell it not to show the tab bar. So I always forget if it's the nav bar is visible, false. Okay, so that goes away. Come on, Xaml. Well, it's not a perfect system. Okay, well, it's just gone for Bluetooth then. I don't think there's a way to hide the menu item though. Maybe tab bar is visible? Ah, there it is. Okay, so it's the tab bar. So yeah, answer your question, Justin, yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Cool.
Of course, now I'm stuck on the Bluetooth page. On hot reload. Okay, well then full reload.
Okay, next question. It seems like everybody wants an image on the nav bar. Where do we at?
By image, do you mean an icon?
Right there.
Are you talking about the bar?
Yeah, on the nav bar.
Up here. So Shell has, wrong thing. This concept of the, so you've got your menu item template if you want to define, I believe that's this. And then there's another template. And it might, no, there it is, title view. So let's do image. What was that? Icon, tab feed. So you can use this title view to overwrite whatever you want that to be. So even if I want this to be like a Flex layout, That's not what I wanted. And I could even do, oh yeah. So the other thing, you apply those styles by using this style class piece here. So I can say text title, and then let's say I also want it to be text warning. And then I want to tell this the direction is row and justify content, space between. Doesn't it look pretty? So yeah, you can make this whatever you want, Justin. If you want to have pictures, go for it. If you want to have custom text, go for it. Whatever's needed.
So what
So
is
this
this
is-
like a dark theme now?
What's that?
What does this look like in a dark theme?
Every bit as hideous.
It's just color.
What's that?
The Bluetooth color text.
Bluetooth isn't the color of the text?
The Bluetooth title is the same color on light and dark.
No, it's not.
Oh, I thought it was.
Warning, dark. They're very similar, admittedly, but not the same. What I actually did, Nate, was take two of your favorite Bootstrap themes and just copied the colors.
Neat. That's cool.
So,
I thought this looked a little bit like Cyborg.
yep. All right, so we could do something that takes us here. Okay, and again, we're just doing that by navigating using string routes. If you hit the back button, though, it's going to close the app. Okay, because according to the shell, it has never navigated away from the main view, which is the shell. So the back button does not work to do this kind of stuff. I had some code in this code behind file on the template that kind of dealt with that, and it works, but it's kind of buggy. I haven't spent enough time figuring it out. So you can look at that and try to figure it out from there if you want. Again, at some point I'll probably have to go through it and look at it, but it's not in here obviously, but it is in the template, or was in the template. I'm not sure at what point it is now. But anyway, you can always get back to it using these. So I come features, and then let's see. I think this one's settings. Okay, so there's settings. And notice again, one thing to point out, because the settings is not registered as something inside the UI, this actually navigates using the old navigation style. So they're really hard to see in the dark theme. But notice I still have the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi tabs down here. Okay, it just thinks the Bluetooth page has now navigated to this settings page. So there are ways to get around that, but just be aware that it's not going to handle it by default. It's going to just assume that whatever page you're on, it is now responsible for a navigation stack. And then when it's done, you should be able to pop right back to where you were, and the shell shouldn't have to do anything to manage that. Okay, so be aware of that. You have to do it yourself, but it does more or less work. Let's see, what did I tell it was the Wi-Fi
That Wi-Fi button.
one? I want to see what one it was. So this one. Okay, so it looks like it's going to be I believe that. This is why I always just use the absolute pathing with the UI stuff, is because figuring out where you were and where you want to go is problematic if you're trying to do it from this kind of a level. Nope, still wrong. Was it features? Yeah, features Wi-Fi. So I wouldn't do it that way. I would just do it this way, and that would get us there. But if you want to see just the go back functionality, Okay, so we'll do Wi-Fi, then Bluetooth, then go back. Well, it's supposed to work. Like I said, I haven't really used this much. But if you really want to look at the shell's routing, there's the Xamarin tutorial page, and it does a much better job explaining how this works than I can. So I'm going to look at this myself because I want to see, I really expect that to work. Anyway, what was the last piece I was going to cover? Oh, that's what it was. All right, so over here in the shell, okay, we've got this menu item. And if you've been paying attention, you'll have noticed, likely, that whenever I navigate to these, it takes up the entire page. Okay, so the entire thing is there. And this tutorial, or this flyout thing goes away when I navigate. But when I go to settings, it doesn't. Okay, it obviously did navigate because you can see the light and dark piece, but it didn't actually go away. I had to click out of it to get to it. I'm going to close this because there's something else I want to show. If we look at this settings clicked function, okay, you can see all it's doing is saying go to a sync, but with everything else, when I navigate to it, the shell is being notified that it's a UI route that's being navigated to. So it knows to close the flyout item. With this, though, it doesn't have that. So if we wanted that functionality, what we would want to do is then say flyout, is it visibility? Is presented. Okay, so we can say flyout is presented as false, and then that should work. Does anybody remember what theme we were on when we last saw it?
Dark.
Okay, and if I come over here, whoops, what is the default theme that it should load?
Light.
Light. Okay, so if this is just restarting everything every time, we should see the light theme. Whenever it gets around to loading. And we get dark. Okay, so the reason is just because I'm loading this into settings and then reading that setting back out and loading it. But we want to make sure we're doing that. If we're doing any sort of theming, we can let the OS take care of it and just look to see if they have requested a theme through the operating system. If they have, deal with it. If not, leave it alone. But if we are actually letting the user choose, like I am in the settings page, then we want to make sure we're storing that off. And you may have noticed this time that the flyout item did go away. That's because we added in, oh, right. When I navigate away, it updates this, and I didn't have anything picked, so it defaulted to light. Anyway, we want to make sure we're storing that off just so that it matches everything. But that's it for Shell. Any other questions?
Awesome stuff.
More of a comment, but I appreciate it.
You give us access to this code somewhere so we can play with it?
I mean, it's in the template. This isn't actually pushed anywhere except for my machine.
You could push it someplace.
If that's something we want, again, like most of this is in the template.
What pieces are not?
This, because there's no settings service for sure that's storing it off. The setup messaging isn't there, again, because setup messaging is just responding to the update theme. So that's not there. But that's stuff that anybody that's done XAML should know already. I'm pretty sure I've seen everybody that uses it deal with the messaging center, so it should be there.
I'll post a link to this video when I upload it, so that'll be pretty good.
Okay, but everything else, like this
You
stuff.
put it on Mindfire GitHub, so it's out of our current repository, but somewhere to access.
Well, I'd rather put it on the Mindfire Git if we're going to put it anywhere. I don't know. I don't see that it's useful because all this stuff like this, I literally did nothing. This is already a part of the theme.
Well,
This
we
is already
don't care what
architected.
you think. What we care about is us.
Well, but what I'm saying though is that everything is there already. Like this is already a part of the Mindfire template.
Yeah.
This is already a part of the Mindfire template.
Okay.
This is already part of the Mindfire template minus the settings piece, which again, you should know how to do, and not every application is going to need settings. So
Sure. So last time we talked a little bit about how to branch off the Mindfire template.
We don't branch off the Mindfire template. What you do, and I'll just show you what I do. So I'm actually going to close this because.
Do we have any feature branches that have any additional functionality? Like, do we have a SQLite feature branch in our template yet? I didn't think we created any of those yet.
Nope.
But I think the idea is that so at one point, not one time, in the future sometime, we'll have things like, okay, well, I needed to create an application. I know I want MySQL database. I know I want Shell. I know I want routing. I know I want GPS, whatever. And then the idea is that we'd be able to just create a branch and then merge those into our branch, and then we have the template we need for moving forward with that project.
Right. So what I do is I have my checkout of the Xamarin template, right? And I'll just copy it and then just paste it in my repositories folder. Give it a second because it's going to have all the DLLs. I probably should have cleaned first. So many files.
What I was thinking about though is, we've got several different versions of the template that we've used with other projects, and it's a little bit harder to go out and grab the new content and add it to our projects.
We only have this template and then an empty project template. So there's only the two.
If you're talking about updating older projects with newer template code, I'm not sure that's a good thing to do. The templates are not exactly backward compatible. And so I think once you pick the template, you kind of move forward with that technology until you're done with that project. The next project gets new technology.
Yeah, I mean, Justin, you, of all people, should know that that's not a trivial thing to move from the Caliburn template to this one.
Oh, for sure. But, if, for example, if official status says, I want dark and light templates, it would be nice to be able to say, okay, I grab this part and throw it in. But instead, I have to go through and copy paste various sections. You know what I mean?
You could create let's say we had a themed patch inside the template. So you really did come off this main template, but one of these, feature branches, as it were, is something that's attractive to you. You could create a patch of that feature branch and apply that patch to your current repository.
I'll let Nate worry about walking you through that.
No worries right now, but if we ever need it, we can talk about it.
Yeah. So Justin, for you, I'm going to call this Justin. Okay, now this is an exact copy of the Mindfire Xamarin template, but just with my new project name. I'm going to come in here. First thing I do is delete the Git folder because I don't want that to be the existing Git stuff. I want to make a new one. And then some of you may see me doing this. Okay, but notice I'm not actually clicking anything. This is Windows Terminal. It's their new terminal. This is just running PowerShell, but of course I can run a bunch of other things. Super, super handy. But to sort of echo Phil, one of the nice things we can do on Windows is auto hotkey. And I can just hit Control-, and that'll show and hide this window. So really nice to set up that way. But especially with Phil's pull request auto hotkey script, like I myself started using that, and it's worlds easier than typing everything myself, and then I forget stuff, and it's a hassle. So if
Maybe
you
we
don't
need to have an auto hotkey Mindfire repository so we can all kind of share these awesome hotkeys.
mine are up on GitHub, but yeah.
Does
I'm
anyone
sure
not
Phil
use
has
auto
like 20
hotkey?
years
They
of
probably
them.
should.
You guys talked over each other. I think Nate said that if you're not using it, you should. I think Justin said something about 20 years ago.
No, I said that Phil probably has about 20 years worth of scripts
Probably true.
or more.
All right, so now that I'm inside this source folder, okay, I can actually come over here to this search feature and just search for, well, I'll show you. So we want to search for this MF Xamarin template piece right here. So MF Xamarin template. And I'm going to replace that with Justin. And I don't know how I got this lucky, but it really appeals to my sense of order that it is exactly 10,000 references. It makes me very happy.
That's just within the name, you know, Justin.
It'll still be 10,000. I just, yeah. Anyway, so if I say replace all, it'll go through, and this will then update all of the files in my project. Why did that not actually save them? All right, fine. Oh, that's why. Override, 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 override. Forget it. So if you're not stupid like I am and don't copy over all the build files, then that won't be a problem.
I usually do the same thing, but I use Notepad++ to replace all the names, but this seems a little easier.
Yeah, and you really shouldn't have bin and object folders inside the template anyway, because, well, most of you aren't going to be contributing to that template. If you are, then yeah, you'll have bin and object folders and just don't copy them like I did, and then problem solved. But overwrite. Nope, don't want to restore the ones I deleted.
You have to just go to the search again?
No, it did it. It was trying to override all the stuff inside the obj and bin folders, and then because I had 2 or 3 of them open, it wanted to restore them. So now they're all renamed. However, if I look at the solution file, 1, you'll notice that it still has the wrong name, and 2, now it's looking for justin/justin.android, but that doesn't exist. I still have mfxamarin template/mfxamarin template.android. Okay, that's a problem. So now I'm going to go to super tool number 1. First, I'm going to rename this Justin, which Visual Studio is going to complain about, so hang on. Try again. Okay, then I'm going to use Power Tools, not Power Tools. Is it Power Tools? Power Toys, to power rename this. And I'm going to come in here and say everything that is MF Xamarin template, replace it with Justin. And I want to, let's see, I want to include everything. So I'm going to not do those out. Let's actually just exclude files because I only care about the folders. Don't care about that. Make title case. Nope. Okay. Rename. And now, demo.justin.api, Justin, justin.tests. I guess I probably should have included files. All right. Power rename, Justin, include files. Come on. There we go. So now it renamed them. So that's what I do. And it takes just about a couple of minutes. And it does a good job. Justin.android, Justin.android. So, and now you have a complete system that is brand new. And then you just come in here to your handy dandy command line and say git init. And now I've got my Git. And then I can link that with the remote. and then I could push it up if I wanted to. But I won't. Why does everyone feel the need to text me when I'm presenting and then never ever when I'm not? Better, Phil, curse you. Put it on silent before you had the chance.
Good job, Phil.
All right, any other questions, comments, queries, quandaries?
Thanks, Dan.
Yay.
If you start doing some of this stuff and get stuck, obviously I can help. Again, the Xamarin, the tutorial stuff on Microsoft's documentation page is fantastic. Does a good job of telling you how to work with the different routes. Obviously, we've got a system set up to use the route navigator. So rather than having the shell directly, you're going to use the route navigator to do that. But otherwise, just do exactly what they show you, and it works quite well. So, but best of luck when you start using it. It's pretty nice.
I hope everybody enjoyed their lunch.
I certainly ordered the right thing. It was fantastic.
Pretty tasty, gotta say.
Okay, well, been fun.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.